Man, what a day. That's where you got to cheer a little bit more. Like, what a day. Man, it's already such a beautiful time together. And I'm so excited to jump into this conversation today. And if you were here last week, you were gifted by such an incredible message by Pastor Irwin, launching us into this deep dive into the person of Jesus over the next few weeks. And we're starting a series called AD 33, the origin story of Jesus. And already it's just an iconic theme. It's like 1923 or 1883 or Yellowstone with a little Jesus wrapped in it. And last week's talk was so powerful, and I encourage you, go, if you haven't listened to it, go check it out on the podcast. And we're going to every week go through the book of John together. And last week we started with John 1, and today we're going to continue the series and diving into this incredible moment in the life of Jesus. And it's such an important moment, because why we want to take some time to dive into John is because it's maybe the most beautiful picture and portrayal of what made Jesus so unique and so profound and so beautiful. That you get insight into his divinity, but also into his humanity. And in John 1, we got the origin story that Jesus on earth wasn't the beginning of his story. That it says that when everything was created, when everything began, it says that Jesus was there. That when you think of time and our existence and creation, it did not happen without Jesus present. And we understand that in the creation story, and that Jesus was there with God, with the Creator from the beginning. But we also have a beginning moment here in the life of Jesus in John chapter 2, where he begins his public ministry to the world. He begins the movement that would change human history forever. And there's something really incredible about this first miracle in the life of Jesus that we find in John chapter 2. Starting in verse 1, it says this. On the third day, a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no more wine." "Woman, why do you involve me?" Jesus replied, "My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kind used by the Jews for ceremonial washing, each holding from 20 to 30 gallons. And when Jesus said to the servants, "Fill the jars with water." So they filled them to the brim. And then he told them, "Now draw out some and take it to the master of the banquet." They did so, and the master of the banquet tasted the water that had been turned into wine. He did not realize where it had come from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. And then he called the bridegroom aside and said, "Everyone brings out the choice wine first, and then the cheaper wine after the guests have had too much to drink, but you have saved the best till now." What Jesus did here in Cana of Galilee was the first of the signs through which he revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. Man, this is such an iconic moment in the life of Jesus. It's the beginning of all the good that he would unleash throughout the world. And the context I find really fascinating, that what Jesus would choose to step into, the environment in which he would step into his first miracle, was a wedding. And I wonder why. Why did he pick this environment, pick this context? And because there's something really beautiful and powerful and transformative about weddings, isn't there? Beck and I, we just were at a wedding in Arizona on New Year's Day, right? The couple really wanted to start their marriage off right. And we go, and it was It was an amazing, beautiful time with good people. And there's something about weddings that just brings out joy in all of us. And we're there, and it's in Arizona. And they were thinking, let's pick the one place to get married where it'll be outdoors, it'll be beautiful, and there's like a 0% chance that it'll rain. And for like a month leading up to the wedding, there was no rain. And then probably for the month after the wedding, there will be no rain. But on this one day, it rained from midnight to midnight nonstop. And we woke up, and it was raining, and we're a little worried, like, oh no, are they gonna get rained out? But we just kept acting like we're good and being confident, and Jesus got this. And we just prayed. Jesus, we prayed there'd be no rain. We know they wanted everything to be beautiful. And even if it rains all day, can we just get like a 30-minute window where it doesn't rain? And then they can do the ceremony, and then it could rain later. Jesus, we on the same page? Let's do this. Jesus was like, nah, I got other ideas. And it just rains all day and all day and all day. And we get to the point where we just have to make the call. We're just going to have to get married in the rain. So all the guests had umbrellas, and it's just me who's officiating the wedding, the bride and the groom, and we're just getting drenched. It was like Jesus was laughing, like, oh, you wanted no rain? More. And as unconventional as it was, as inconvenient as having all this rain in the middle of this wedding, I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, it was one of those beautiful celebrations that I've ever been a part of. That the rain didn't stop the love. See, the rain didn't stop the commitment. The rain didn't stop the people coming together, celebrating that when God's at the center of something, it feels a little different. And the rain could not stop the joy that we got to celebrate at that wedding. See, when Jesus is here at this wedding, the context is important because it wasn't just about what happened in this moment, it was going to be about what happened every moment beyond. And it says, here's what happens. On the third day, a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. And when the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, they have no more wine. Woman, why do you involve me? Jesus replied, my hour has not yet come. His mother said to his servants, do whatever he tells you. See, here in this moment, there's so many moments in the scriptures where I feel like I can relate to the characters, I can relate to the story, but sometimes it's hard to relate to like when you're reading about Jesus because he's like God. But in this moment, I relate so much to Jesus. Like when even 30-year-old Jesus can't stop his mom from telling him what to do. I mean, you would think God would have dominion and power over his overbearing mom, but even Jesus had a mom that told him what to do. She's like, look, Jesus, there's no more wine. Love his response, right? My hour has not yet come. Jesus was an artist, right? That's an artist response. Like, Jesus don't have any more wine. And he didn't say anything about the wine, just, my hour has not yet come. And his mom completely ignores him. I don't care about your hour. I don't care what time it is. And she ignores him and goes to the servants and says, do whatever he tells you, right? She's assuming that Jesus is not going to do it. All moms are the same. Jewish moms, black moms, Puerto Rican moms. When they want something to be done, they will get it done. Right? Pastor Kim's clapping. I relate so much to Jesus in this moment. And his mother said to the servants, do whatever he tells you. So when he says, my hour is not yet come, maybe it's a moment where Jesus had the perfect scenario of how this first miracle was going to go. Because when you read the life of Jesus, there's some pretty epic miracles. Right? There's a moment where Lazarus is dead. And he's been dead for days. And Jesus goes and he says, Lazarus, get up. And this dead man who everyone saw die and knew dead starts walking again. Pretty hard to top that miracle. There's another miracle. There's a blind man, and Jesus spits in the dirt, and he makes mud, puts it on his eyes, and then all of a sudden, he can now see. Pretty unconventional miracle. I don't know if I'd want that one, right? But still a pretty phenomenal moment. There's miracle after miracle after miracle. You look at the life of Jesus, and they would seem to be a little more pizzazz and bravado than turning water into wine. Why would this be his first miracle? Why simply take something that is a pleasure and trying to make a statement about the human story? See, why wine? See, in Jewish culture, wine symbolized joy. And to run out of wine meant that you would run out of joy. And imagine the context of the God of the universe, the God of the human story, the God of you and I, entering into a moment where there was a vacuum of joy. See, when Jesus entered into our story, joy did not come naturally. There was oppression, there was fear, there was disease. All the Jewish people knew was that there was a story of a God who would come and save, but they waited and wondered, will he ever come? How could you find joy when the only story you know is struggle? And Jesus steps into their story and our story at this wedding, declaring that I promise you, if you invite me in, you will have an overwhelming amount of joy. See, I think it's so intentional. Why? In this moment, Jesus started his ministry, and his first miracle of turning water into wine is because there's something really powerful about first, right? You remember your first job? Or better yet, your first paycheck? Like, oh, that's why I got the job. Or you remember your first kiss? All right, mine was that golfing stuff at the arcade and next to the machine that goes and grabs or it's supposed to grab the thing and never grabs the thing. And it was me, and I don't remember her name. So I don't remember her, but I remember the kiss. Or you remember I remember my first ribeye. So I thought it had steak before, but I realized, no, that's called burnt, right? And I had my first medium rare ribeye, and I was enlightened. See, we always remember our first. The first is what sets the table for everything that's to come next. And here at the wedding, see, Jesus was planting his flag in the sand, saying, I don't know how much joy you've encountered up until this moment. I don't know how much of a vacuum there is inside of your soul where you desperately long to love life the way that I intend. But what I'm telling you is that wherever you find me, you will always find joy. And this is not just a wedding. It's a marker. And there's a few things that I want to leave us with when we're talking about the origin story of Jesus and what happens when he marks his territory in our lives. And the first thing is that Jesus comes to bring you joy. And it's that simple. That there's moments in your life and my life where we don't need more money. We don't need more revelation. We don't need more miracles. What our soul desperately needs is his presence, and in his presence we find our joy. And I love in verse 6, it says, after Mary tells the servants, do whatever he tells you, it says, nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kind used by the Jews for ceremonial washing, each holding from 20 to 30 gallons. And Jesus said to the servants, fill the jars with water. So they filled them to the brim. See, this is such a powerful moment here. Because Jesus hears his mother's cry. He decides to act. So he looks to the servants and he looks around. There's 6 stone water jars. And he says, fill them with water. And it says they fill them to the brim. And this here is just a crazy moment. Because let me do some math. I failed math all through college. But I want to, thankfully I have a calculator. So I want to go with a little bit of math together. It says that nearby there's 6 jars that hold 20 to 30 gallons each. Let's go on the high end, 30 gallons. So that's 180 gallons of water. And then Jesus turns it into wine, 180 gallons of water. You know how many bottles of wine 180 gallons is? 900. 900. I feel like everybody at this wedding was a bunch of alcoholics. I feel like Jesus should have been like, no, all y'all are done. But instead, Jesus was like, no, let's 900 bottles. I mean, I promise you there were not 900 guests at this wedding. Even if there were, that's 1 bottle each. It's a great takeaway gift at a wedding, actually. Here's your bottle, right? 900 bottles of wine. What? That feels a little excessive. And feels a little over the top, Jesus. But this is so important. Stay with me. Because Jesus goes and he says, fill these water jars. I love the fact that he just said, fill them. And then the very next sentence, it says that they filled them to the brim. See, how many times in our lives does Jesus make himself available to us? How many times in our lives does Jesus say, what do you want to give me? What container do you want me to fill up? And we say, God, here is the container, and then we fill it halfway. And then we wonder, God, why have you given me a half-life? He said, why didn't you fill it to the brim? See, maybe you're here and you feel like God has been withholding to you. Maybe you're here and you feel like that the tap of your life, when it came to turn it on, that God turned it off and he didn't give you all the success and all the joy and all the wonder and all the life that you wanted. But what you failed to realize is that God didn't turn on the tap. You limited his capacity. See, God will never force himself on you and I. He will always go at our pace. So you want a half-life? Here you go. I'm going to give you a half-life. But if you fill it to the brim, if you allow him to do what only he can do, you will find a joy that overwhelms and overflows in every single arena of your life. See, they filled it to the brim. There was an expectation that they did not want to waste a drop. Man, in our house, we make tea all the time. My wife is from New Zealand, and so my mother-in-law, her mom, has not visited us in about 5 years, but I have our tea cabinet stocked for when Pam Bell shows up. And we have a tea household, and every time we're making tea, it's so interesting. We have our kettle, and on that kettle, there's a line that says Max. Right? You have a kettle, you know what line I'm talking about? It's always that line that says Max, and whenever I fill the kettle to that line Max, and I try to make tea for both of us, there's never enough water. Like, who created this stupid kettle? Was you only thinking one person? Who drinks tea by themselves? Serial killers. Unless that's you. If you drink tea by yourself, you enjoy that tea. Have a moment with you and your English breakfast. But it's so annoying. Like, why is the line so short? Because I think it's something in us that we never want to have too much. And I get why they have it. They're like, don't fill up too much because then it'll overflow. But why are we afraid of the overflow? How often has God looked at us and said, man, I want to keep pouring and pouring, but we're like, no, God, the line is at max. And I think it's time for us to ignore that max line and say, God, bust open the lid. Pour, pour, pour. I want more. Because whenever you find the person of Jesus and you invite him into your life, your future forever changes because Jesus comes to bring you joy. But in the same breath that he comes to bring you joy, he also comes to bring you overflow. And man, I love going to Pastor Kim's house in general. Anytime she invites me over for a dinner, we have a staff meeting, anything. I love it because I know I will not go home empty-handed. Like every time Pastor Kim cooks, it doesn't matter if there are 20 people there, 50 people there, 100 people there. She cooks for 5 times the amount of people that are there. And it always was so beautiful, and I love it. But also my other thought would be, we don't need so much. Pastor Kim, why is there so much? Because there's something in the character and nature of who she is that she does not lead from a place of lack. She leads from a place of abundance. And I think so many of us, see, this is how we engage with God, is we go home empty-handed. And God's like, there's an overflow and an abundance waiting for you. But you have to change your posture. You have to change your mindset. You have to erase the lines that we have created that limit all the good that God wants to do in our lives. See, I am so sick and tired of telling myself that there's a lack in my life. And it's not because of anything that God said about me. It's all the things that I say about me. See, I'm ready for a disruptive voice in my soul that reminds me that he is a God of abundance, not scarcity. And I think that's why in this moment when Jesus turns the water into wine and it's 900 bottles worth of wine, I think it was for this moment right now with you and I. I think it was for all the moments that would come after this miracle, and that Jesus was declaring to the human spirit, there is no cap, there is no limit, there is no max when it comes to what I can do in your life. See, they take these 6 jars and they fill them to the brim. So I wonder for you, what are the areas of your life that you haven't even offered to God because you can't see what he sees? See, the other beautiful thing about these 6 jars is that they were used for hand washing. They were used for people just to get clean. It was never supposed to be a container for drinking water or a container for wine, but that's the beauty of how God works. Whatever you give him, he will create a miracle inside of it. And then verse 8, it says, then he told them, now draw some out and take it to the master of the banquet. They did so, and the master of the banquet tasted the water that had been turned into wine. He did not realize where it had come from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. And then he called the bridegroom aside and said, everyone brings out the choice wine first, and then the cheaper wine, after the guests have had too much to drink. But you have saved the best till now. What Jesus did here in Cana of Galilee was the first of the signs through which he revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. Man, this is such a crescendo moment in this miracle. Because it says what Jesus tells him is, after he turns the water into wine, he says, take some out and take it to the master of the banquet. Take it to the person who is in charge, who is making this wedding happen. And as soon as he drinks it, he notices a difference. See, first of all, right there, see, that's the beauty of what happens when God interjects himself into a story. You always see the difference. See, your friends may not have ever heard you talk about the person of Jesus, but when the person of Jesus changes you, they'll see a difference. He drinks this water and he makes this declaration while everyone else brings out the good wine first, and then they leave the cheap wine for at the end. But you have saved the best to last. See, when you read the scriptures over and over and over again, you'll find what God does is he flips things on its head. He looks at the common stories in our humanity, the common narratives and culture, and he says, how can I flip the script? How can I be disruptive? How can I shift something so that everyone who's encountering this and experiencing this knows a difference, and then they'll look for what it points to. He said, everyone else gives the worst last, but you save the best till last. Why is it? Because that is how God works. Is that in all these moments, we think that the last is what is the leftovers. The last is what no one else wanted. But what Jesus declares in this moment is that I will always save the best for last, even when you choose me last. See, it's crazy how you and I relate to God. And so thankful that he does not relate to us the same way. Like, how many times have we tried other avenues to fill the vacuum in our soul that only he can fill? See, how many times have you turned to a podcast? How many times have you turned to a religion? How many times have you turned to a spouse or a friend or a coworker or a crystal? Could be a coworker, could be a crystal. Man, if I was God, I would be angry, knowing that I'm the very source of life, knowing that I could bring to you exactly what you long for, and yet you keep searching every other avenue. See, if I was God and you didn't come to me first, see what happens when you come the next time. See how quickly I respond to you. But you should be glad that he's God and I'm not. I know I am. But that's not how he works. So God, it does not matter how many different religions you have studied. It does not matter how many different gods you have worshiped and followed. It does not matter how many mistakes you've made, how many times you've blown it, how many times you've told God, I'll never do it again, and then you do it tomorrow. See, it does not matter how many times we reject him. His promise to us is that all you have to do is make one choice, one shift, one turn. And when you come back to me, when you have a moment with me, and when our spirits are aligned, I will not give you the worst wine. I will save the best for last. Because Jesus comes to bring you joy. Jesus comes to bring you overflow. But maybe the most important thing that he does is Jesus comes to bring you his best. And that when you place your hands in the life of Jesus, you realize that everything else was $2 chuck. Everything else was rosé. Right. Everything else was a 2020 Malbec. Fires ruined that. But there's nothing like the everlasting life, the everlasting joy, the everlasting love that happens when you place your life in the hands of Jesus. And regardless of if you've made that choice time and time again, or if you're making that choice today, right now, for the first time, his promise is that you will find nothing better than his love. I'm a big 49er fan, and so we're having an incredible season. But it was really shaky. If you don't listen to sports, just imagine I'm talking about The Bachelor, okay? But the 49ers were having the promise of a great season, and their number one quarterback, this projected star of their team, in the second game of the season breaks his leg and he's out for the year. And then the backup comes in and he's having an incredible year, and then he breaks his ankle and he's out for the year. And now what's left is they have their third string quarterback. And this is kid named Brock Purdy. Brock, I hope you're listening. I'm a big fan. I'm gonna buy you a jersey. And Brock Purdy is a rookie. So this is his first time in the NFL, but even more hilariously than that, he was the very last pick in the draft. And in the NFL, they call the very last pick a tradition. They literally call them Mr. Irrelevant. Isn't that terrible? Because they're like, you're irrelevant. You'll never play. You're the last pick. And they do a whole thing. He gets a jersey that on the back says Mr. Irrelevant. And he, all of a sudden, 10 weeks into the season, he has to be the starting quarterback for a team that has hopes of winning a Super Bowl. And he just graduated college 6 months ago. And he has gone on to be undefeated for his first 6 games. Yesterday, he had the best playoff debut of any rookie of NFL history. He's breaking every single record. Every player is like, we've never seen somebody like this who has so much poise right away. And yeah, you can clap for that. And I love on a sports level who Brock is, and who knows how the story is gonna play out. But there's something beautiful about firsts. There's something powerful about origin stories. See, he's never gonna have another rookie season. This is his only one. But when they tell the story of Brock Purdy years from now, and maybe his career is one of the greatest of all time, and maybe his career crashes and burns, who knows? But what I know this, someone who is declared irrelevant has now found himself the most relevant story in all of sports. You can clap for that, right? But here's why I love Brock. Because I don't care what anyone has said about you. I don't care what other voices have tried to shape you, have told you you're less than. I don't care what you have said about you. All I know is that God sees a future in you. God sees power in you. He sees freedom in you. He sees joy in you. He sees overflow in you. And all he needs is for you to have the courage to, when your time comes, to give him those 6 jars. And when he says, fill them with water, what he asks of you is, I want you to fill them to the brim. I want you to put me to the test to see what I can do. See, I know there's so many of you in this room right now where you desperately want your life to be filled to the brim, that there's an emptiness that you cannot fill on your own. There's a vacuum of hope and joy. There's a missing piece, and no matter what you fill it, it's as if your jars are leaking. And that's because you're trying to fill the wrong jar. The jar that God wants is your soul. And if you place your life in his hands, he will keep pouring and pouring and pouring, and then the overflow of his joy will spill into every arena of your life. But you have to start somewhere. And I know there's some of you here, the first choice that you need to make is to trust Jesus with your life. So I want all of us to bow our heads and close our eyes in this moment. And if you're here right now, and you have tried everything, you've tried every fad, every trend, every religion, you've tried every TikTok, every Instagram, you've tried every medium to bring you joy and to bring you peace, but you find yourself right here in this moment, still broken, still empty, still wondering if anyone can make sense of your life. But you're finally here and you're finally ready to trust Jesus. Trust Jesus, the one who loves you infinitely, the one who came to bring you joy and to bring you overflow and to bring you the gift of himself. If you're here and you're ready to follow Jesus, to place your life in his hands and to say yes to the joy waiting you on the other side of your fear, then all you have to do right now is pray this simple prayer. Say, Jesus, I give you my life. That's it. Jesus, I give you my life. And it's with those words, you're saying, Jesus, I'm ready for you to fill my jar. Jesus, I give you my life. I'm no longer going to try to make sense of this on my own. Jesus, I give you my life. And you receive his joy, and you receive his forgiveness. You receive his mercy. You receive his grace. You receive his love. Okay, if you prayed that prayer right now and you crossed over the line of faith, you trusted Jesus with everything, what I want you to do as quickly as you can is raise your hand right now so I can pray for you. Beautiful, beautiful. Anyone else? Keep your hand up. Yes, this is a declaration. You're saying, Jesus, I'm finally ready. No turning back. Beautiful, beautiful. Come on. Anyone else? Jesus, I give you my life. Father, I pray for everybody who has their hand held high right now. Jesus, I pray that you would just fill their soul with your presence, Jesus. I pray that as clear as day right now, that they would just feel your arms wrapping around them, and they'd feel your love, and they would feel your peace, and that your voice would swallow up all the other voices trying to steal this moment. And right now, Jesus, I pray you would remind them of who they are in you. Father, we thank you that we can never turn too far away. We can never be too far gone. That you are the God who will always meet us when we call upon you. You'll always bring us the joy that we long for. We love you. We thank you, Jesus. And we ask all this in your name. Amen. Hey, Mosaic, can we just celebrate everyone who made a choice today to follow Jesus? Beautiful. Man, if you're here, and I know there's some of you as well, or maybe you've made a choice to follow Jesus in the past, but you know if you do that self-diagnosis that you're not living life to the fullest, that you have not stepped into the life that God created you, and you're ready to just elevate, you're ready to just live to the brim, then I want to encourage you this week. Make practical steps to realign your life to allow God to pour goodness and beauty and wonder and revelation into your life. Practically, maybe that's you getting friends together and starting a Bible study, going, I need to dive into the scriptures. Or some of you just need one friend that's with you on this journey and that, hey, can you help me? Because I need to realign my life back. Maybe you're here and you're a once a monther. I know who you are. You know who you are. Maybe your practice step is going from once a month to twice a month. Maybe you come twice a month, come every week, right? We're here every Sunday, 10 and 12, and bring friends. Maybe for you, if you're not living to the fullest, it's because you just haven't made yourself available to what God wants to do in your life. Whatever it is for you, take that next step. Make that practical choice to say, God, I know that you're the God of overflow. I know that you're the God that wants more than I could ever dream or imagine. And so I'm going to put you to the test. And I'm going to bring as many jars as possible. Maybe that's what we do this week. As we see how many jars we can bring to God and say, God, I'm ready for all of the overflow that you have for my life. And if you do that with us, with me, we do this together. Man, you thought the floods of the last week were something. You thought like the LA River was something. See, the LA River, and as crazy a thing was flowing, it ain't got nothing on when the people of God move together with courage, with intention, with meaning and purpose. I think it's time for us to flood this city with his love and watch the world point to him, because every miracle God ever did, it was not for the miracle. It was to point to the sign of the one who is the source of all miracles. Mosaic, I love you. Let's keep going together.